Hello, Class 4. I'm going to be answering some questions that you submitted to me. They were really good questions, and I'm going to start with the first question is how do plants grow? All right, so before I answer that, I actually am going to address the question of how do animals grow? Because it's a little bit different, and I think it's useful to compare the two. So, animals, in order to grow, what do we need? We need food, right? So, in order for an animal to grow, they need to eat, whatever it is that they eat. Um, so, here are some examples of people munching away at food. Of course, different animals eat different things, but you get the idea. Now, for plants, it's quite different. They actually undergo a process called photosynthesis, and it's really quite magical if you think about it. Basically, what they're doing, they're eating the sun in a way. So the sun shines down on a plant, the sunlight hits a leaf, and the leaf, with a material inside of it called chlorophyll, actually is able to turn the light, carbon dioxide, which is a gas in the air that's just found in the air, and water, which is another need of plants. It turns those three things, sunlight, energy from the sun, carbon dioxide, and water, into sugars, and it uses those sugars to basically grow. When you cut open a plant, it's actually the material that it's growing with are simple sugars, and it releases as a byproduct something called oxygen, which is in the air that we breathe and something that we actually need. So here's an example of a plant just growing because it got sunlight. Uh, quite quite miraculous. Imagine standing out in the sun and growing, and of course that's not the way things are. But for plants, it is. Now it does get some nutrients from the soil, but it just needs some small amounts. Really, all the energy and food that it makes comes from this process of photosynthesis. Next question is what is gravity? All right, so I'm going to start out explaining first of all, what a force is. A force is either a push or a pull. So if you push something, you're using force. If you pull something, you're also using a force. So forces can be either touching forces, as in here, we see people pulling on the rope, their hands are connected to the ropes, so that's called a touching force. Same thing with this animation on the or video on the bottom. The bat hits the ball, so it touches the ball, so it's a touching force. But there are also non-touching forces. So one of them would be something called gravity. You see the apples falling. Another example actually would be magnetic force, which you see on the bottom. So let's focus on that top one, gravity. And basically, the way scientists think of it right now is that essentially space is being curved by massive objects. Everything that's made of matter actually has some amount of gravity, but the bigger something is, the more gravity it has. So we see in this picture the Earth is bending space, so it has a decent amount of gravity. Now, not as much as the sun, which is bent, which is bigger than Earth, and it's making the space bend as well. So something is going to be a lot heavier than that. Um, so things on the sun are going to have a lot more mass than on Earth. Um, Speaking of mass, somebody asked the question: How much does the Earth weigh? So let's look at that number. That number is a 6 followed by 24 zeros. So if we just had those three zeros, that would be hundreds. Then we have hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions, quintillions, sextillions. So it's 6 sextillion kilograms. That's a lot of weight. So the Earth is very heavy. A student had asked how much the Earth weighs. Our next question, can people live in outer space? So I thought that was an interesting question. It depends what you mean by living in outer space. So we're going to look at one of the first space capsules that somebody that the one of the first people who were in outer space used to travel in outer space. Now, this is tiny, and I would say that this person was not able to live in outer space for very long. First of all, it wouldn't be very comfortable. There's a tight space, not much food. So this person had to come back very quickly, maybe go around the Earth a few times. That's called orbiting. But really, we wouldn't say that they lived in space. Nowadays, they have and there's actually something called the International Space Station where people can live for several months. Now, it's still very expensive to bring supplies up there. You have to launch a rocket to bring food. So, for years on end, would it be possible for somebody to live? Perhaps, but that would be very difficult. Not like we live here on Earth. Um, Thank you for your questions, Class 4. It's been good talking to you. Bye.